if you want to turn this into this, or turn this into this, I highly recommend that you follow along this video. I will be showing you how to render out your images and grade them in Davinci Resolve, how to prepare OpenEXR files, and how to just all around have a good starting point in order to grade your images or animations. So follow along. So before rendering our image, in order to color grade it inside of Davinci Resolve, we need to do a couple of things. Now, the first thing, we would like to just go ahead and check out our render settings. I won't be talking about the sampling or anything else. I will be spending most of the time talking about color management. Now here I will be using AGX, right? Let's leave a look at base contrast. It doesn't matter at this point. Why are we using AGX? Because it's just way better, and it holds a lot more information, and it's a very nice color space to be working with, especially if you are used to something like ACES. So it's less work. Now, after which, we need to go to the output properties. For the output properties, at default, it's usually PNG or JPEG. In our case, we need to be using OpenEXR. Why are we using OpenEXR? Because it gives us a full dynamic range. So we have a lot more information stored that we can play around with when we get to grading our image. Now, you also have to go ahead and check the color, make sure that it's RGB. The color depth, I like to go ahead and have float full, so we have more details and more information to play with. Now for the coding, this is very important, especially if you are doing animations. By default, it's set to one of these lossless codecs. Personally, I would like to use DWAA or DWAB, so slightly lossy. Why? Because it turns a EXR file from 200 megabytes up to 4 megabytes, 5 megabytes. In this case, the file was like 1.6 megabytes. So if you are doing animations, instead of an animation take like 1 terabyte of data, it would be taking you like 10 gigabytes, for example. Now, after doing this, you would need to go ahead and go to the color management. Instead of follow scene, you need to go ahead and press override. And you know, any of these technically could work, but I like to use AGX log. You will understand in a second. Now, why did we do this? Why didn't we just render a JPEG, regular JPEG, without thinking much about the color space? We need the colors to be consistent from Blender and Davinci Resolve, so we have the same exact result. I don't want Blender to interpret the colors differently than Davinci Resolve and vice versa. Now, after doing this, we will go ahead and come down here to Davinci Resolve. So, if you don't know Davinci Resolve, it's the industry standard for color grading. Now, this is how the default UI looks. We have here something that says no clips in media pool. So what you want to do is add your image here, for example, or your sequence, or just video. Right, so go ahead and we have a raw file. Now you might say, why does it look like this? You said that it will look great when using OpenEXR. You lied to us. No, I did not lie, I promise you. This is how it's supposed to look. And it does not look like this at all inside of Davinci Resolve. So it looks washed out, as if it has no contrast, no saturation. Now this is what is called a raw file. So the color transform is the most bland or the most washed out in order to retain the most information. We would need to make these informations in order to get a nice result in a minute. Now let's add a different timeline here using our same exact raw file. Now when doing this, let's choose the second one here. And let's go ahead and choose the color tab. Here, as you could see, we had multiple tabs. Let's choose the color tab. Now, as you can see, it has nodes here, right? So let's go ahead and just press this. It has the nodes, so like the Blender compiler tool. One important shortcut to know is Alt-S. So press Alt-S in order to add multiple nodes. Now these nodes are not like Blender. We don't like drag one of these out here and it will give you a node, but you know, it's done a bit differently. So what you do here is press Alt S, and let's do that 3 other times. You will understand why in a minute. Each of these will be responsible of doing a certain action and slightly changing the look of our image. Now, the most important thing is to make this look correct. So make it look consistent with Blender. What you need to do this is tell Davinci Resolve to show you the correct image using the color transform. You could go ahead and add from the Resolve Effects color, you could go ahead and add a color space transform, but it would need a lot of fiddling around, and it's not the easiest way. You could go ahead and add a DCTL, but you know, again, it needs a bit of playing around. The easiest way is by using LUTs. So for a LUT is a lookup table. You might be familiar with it. If you're not familiar with it, it's practically like a filter that changes color based on a cube file, .cube. So I have made my own using the configuration file from Blender, and I will be linking it down below as well. Or you could download this pack from Andreas Derb as well. Now, how do we add this LUT? So if you want to see the LUTs, you go ahead and press LUTs here, and you will find these, right? And you could preview how they look, right? Now we have this LUT here. The important thing we need to do is add it in the first place. So what you want to do to add it is just press Project Settings. Go ahead and press that. Go to the Color Management tab here, and go to Lookup Tables and press Open LUT folder. So what does this folder hold? It holds all of your LUTs. So we have many LUTs here, right? What you want to do is just copy paste your LUTs folder inside of the LUT folder, inside of the trajectory that Davinci Resolve gives you directly. Now, let's say I will add my own. I have it here. It's called Blender AG Xlock to Davinci. I would recommend that you don't use this, in all honesty. If I had known about this pack before I have made it, I wouldn't have even bothered to make it. So just download this one for free and add it. Now, if you happen to choose to use mine, you know, I would be flattered, but I wouldn't recommend. You just go ahead and go here, copy this using Ctrl+C, and go here to the LUT section and just paste it. And once you paste it, you would need to press on Update Lists and save. And directly you will find a folder called AGXlog. Now let's just preview these. Now this looks wrong, didn't change much. This looks also wrong, so let's just put this AGXlog before the final node. Now let's do something. Let's check the colors here. As you can see, we have, I believe it's called a histogram. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a professional color grader. I'm just someone that does CGI and wants to make his images look as pretty as possible. Now, as you could see, look at how much additional information we have, and you know, we have a full dynamic range, more or less. Now, after we add the information and make it, look how much information we have. We have almost no information. It's way less dynamic range than what we had here. So look at how much more data we have here. So, you know, it appears to me from this curve here that it has around like 60% more data, I believe. So how do we see this? As you could see, this might look a bit intimidating. So let's choose our first one, and let's say you want to add some exposure. You could go ahead and add from the curves here. So just go ahead and do this. Or you could go ahead to the left and, for example, let's do 0.5, yeah. And we have more exposure. Now let's go ahead and, for example, let's add some more contrast. You could go ahead and add it from here as well. Or you could go ahead and just add it from the curve. So what contrast is, it just makes the image more contrasty by making the darker points darker and the lighter points lighter, right? So I'm practically doing the same using the curve. right? So let's just do this from the contrast here. And you know, since this is a EXR file, you get to have a lot more, you know, freedom when adding contrast, so you don't really burn the image as quickly as you would when not having any dynamic range. Now here, let's say, for example, you want to go ahead and just play with the temperature, you know, or the tint. If you, for example, want to add some slight greenish tint, as I did here, you could go ahead and play with the gain or gamma or the offset. But in this case, you know, to keep this video very short, I won't do that. Now, this looks still bad, and I want this to look like it has been taken by a camera, and cameras have imperfections. They have dust, they have noise, they have grain, they have scratches, they have film damage. How can we do that? Well, we can do that by using a plugin, the same way we can do things inside of Blender by using plugins. So what's this plugin called? It's called Dehancer Pro. I have used this plugin in the past using their free trial, and when their team has approached me in order to do a video showcase in it, I was more than thrilled. Now, to keep this as transparent as I could, this video is not sponsored. I was not paid at all to say anything good or bad about this plugin. It's just a matter of showcasing it. What I do have is a promo code which is called Alternavision CGI. And when you buy and you type this code when checking out, it will give you a 10% discount and give me a royalty as well. So by doing that, you get to have a discount if you happen to decide to buy this add-on, which I would personally recommend doing, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of color grading, or you know, if it's part of your job, color grading. And let's just take a look at how it works. So you go ahead and just locate it here. It will be at the right end. So film emulation, you just drag and drop it to the last node, and it looks very different from the beginning. Now let's disable everything that's enabled by default in order to start with a clean canvas. Now let's start by just talking about the input. Let's leave it at rec.709. It looks correct. Let's go ahead and, you know, here you get to have to play around with the exposure. I wouldn't recommend that you do that here, since as you could see, we have a lot less information, so our image is more prone to burning and clamping, as you can see here. Now let's keep this at 0. You could go ahead and play around with the temperature, you know, you could go ahead and play with the film developer in order to add some contrast, but you know, as I mentioned earlier, we have an EXR, let's make use of that much information. Now let's go ahead and let's, for example, say you want to give it a certain camera profile that emulates a camera. Now you're in luck. Dehancer Pro comes with many profiles. They are not only lots, but they also hold some more information, as you would see in a moment. Now let's just play around with these, and until we find something that we really like. Now, as you can see, I'm just scrolling my mouse wheel until I see something that I kind of dig. But let's go back to this one. I like this one more or less. Or, you know, there are many to play with. So let's, for example, let's settle on I like this one. Let's keep this one. You could go ahead and play around with this as well, with the slider as well, see how it changes your image. So I would like to leave it at this point. Now we have film compression. Now this is an imperfection, right? Most photographers don't wish to not have film compression, but we as CGI artists, we really need imperfections. We don't need the perfect computer generated look that has no, let's say, margin of error or of exterior factors that might change the look of our image to give it some more imperfections or some issues per se. So once you press it, you can see you start seeing some issues, you start seeing some changes, especially in the plateau areas. Now, as you could see, let's enable it and let's push it further, as you can see, it's slightly suppressing our higher colors. Now let's just have a little bit of that. Let's play around with the white point and let's give it some slight burning. I like to have some burning in my images, just to emulate a camera with lower dynamic range. Now after doing that, you could go ahead and play around with any of these, but what I like to talk about the most is film grain. I really love film grain or noise. It's different from the grain that Blender makes. The Blender noise comes from not having enough samples to clean up the image, but this one looks very, very nice. Let's give it a lot just for the sake of this tutorial, and let's play around with any of these profile layers. I would like to go ahead and choose the ISO 500 to get this type of sharp and colorized noise, so it's not monochrome and it holds like some colors, which adds some really nice details grain. Now we have a noisy image in a positive way. We could add the elation as well. So as you can see, elation is just where we have some type of bleeding near the lighter image, lighter areas of the image. Let's also add some bloom. And as always, you have a couple of profiles to play with to emulate a certain camera lens. Now all of these are like actual phenomena that happen with a camera lens. And you know, cameras can get scratched, can get foggy, so they do have some really nice sliders and options here to emulate that. Now we also have some film damage. Let's enable this here, and let's do, for example, 60 to 70 millimeters, and let's highly up it. It won't be visible now, but it will be when I will play this as an animation. Now you could go ahead and explore any of these. You know, you could go ahead and choose the film, play with the film breath, gate weave. I would recommend that you just explore this as much as you can. I also like to add a vignette. Now, how do I like to add a vignette? I like to have the exposure at -2. Make sure that it's enabled first. And I have no feathering. I also like to, this way I get to see it more clearly. Now, I don't want this to be affecting the image way too much, so I like to have the size slightly larger. Let's tone down the exposure so it's less crazy, and let's now add some feather until we need it. So I would like to keep it at around 35, which is a good point. As you can see, this is width, this is width, and this is without. Let's keep it with. Now you get to play around with the type. Now let's consider this as a filter, for example, and you have the slider of the transparency or the amount of this filter. Now this is without, and this is with. Without, with, without, and with. As you could see, this is like the layer system in Photoshop. So it gives us a bit more control. So we don't want all of this, you know, and this can be a really powerful tool. If you would, for example, exaggerate all of these effects in order to, for example, see it better and see what it does when experimenting, but you want it less effective in the final image, you could just go ahead and make this very, very exaggerate, for example. And here in the output, you choose the total impact and you lower it. So from 100, let's do, for example, 50%. So if we keep it at 0, nothing, and 50%, it gives us 50% of all of the filters that we added. Now we could go ahead and generate a lot out of this. This lot can be used anywhere else. It can be used inside of, for example, Unreal Engine. It can be used inside of Photoshop. So this way you could be generating like 100 lots for really quick use, and employing these, you know, in any software that you want, thus making multiple lots and saving you a lot of time. Now this looks interesting. Let's go ahead and compare it with what we had beforehand, and let me just show you something very interesting. Now let's play this as an animation. This is our raw image. You know, it has nothing. But let's take a look at this image here. Now as you can see, the noise is moving, and every now and then you see some type of kind of damage or tearing in the film. And you know, I'm not sure if it's visible in the compression, but it's really, really, really nice. Now, as you can see here at the corner, especially. It's very visible in the corner. Some type of white flickering. Now let's say we want to export this as an image or as a sequence. What you want to do is go ahead to File, Export. You could go ahead and add Timeline or Current Frame as Still. Let's do Current Frame as Still. And just export it as a JPEG or as any other type of file format that you have available here. Now let's wrap this up. We have taken a look at how to export from Blender, making sure that we have set it to OpenEXR and using the AGX log. We have also gone ahead and played around with Davinci Resolve, applied our colors and made it look normal again. We have also played around with a really amazing plugin called Dehancer Pro. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you do happen to buy this, feel free to use my promo code. This video is not sponsored, I repeat it again. But you know, personally I find this tool very useful. Now, until next time, take care and enjoy yourself.